Thanks a lot. I hope I can live up to that. Let's see. So I guess everybody knows that 2 years ago there was this big hype around massive open online courses. Dozens of millions of dollars poured into that industry. The headlines of the international magazines, newspapers. I want to talk about the aftermath of that hype. What has happened? Why did it happen? Then I want to go on talking about what may work. We see lots of things that do not work. We learn from those MOOCs. And some aspects that may work and that actually do work. I want to speak about those. And eventually I want to talk about vitamins and fiber, what could potentially be missing in what we're trying to achieve here. The aftermath. So the massive open online course, the idea of the massive open online course led to a huge number of initiatives, companies, all across the world, starting with Coursera, Udacity, edX. Even in Arabia, China, Japan, Australia, Spain, Portugal. Even in Germany we see lots of these initiatives. I do not want to discuss them all, I just want to show that the map is filled with these names. I want to speak about the phases that I see in the history of the development. I guess one can spot 3 different phases. The first phase was a grassroots movement. University professors trying to broaden their audience, to use the internet to address thousands, maybe tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of learners. A grassroots movement in the sense of professors being the grassroots, not students, that's a different story. Then there came a time where universities tried to compete with each other concerning the reputation. You had to have a dozen of MOOCs to be somebody in the world of academia. If you are Stanford, you have to have 100 MOOCs, I guess, at this point of time. It's part of being Stanford, it's part of being Harvard. You have to show off what you can do. As Harvard and Stanford, you're not dealing with crowded lecture halls. You're showing that you have the best teachers, the best professors, and you can give it away for free. You can afford to give it away for free. This was around 2013, and now it's the platforms. Individual universities become hidden behind platforms. You go to Coursera to study something. Maybe in Germany in some months you're going to iversity, not to Technische Hochschule, but to iversity to study something. The platforms become way more prominent right now. It started out with the idea of democratization of education. Everybody, everywhere in the world should be able to get higher education. If you look at such a map, there are some students of my own MOOC at Udacity, put pins on the Google map, see, okay, this looks pretty much like democratization of education. There are some blind spots in Africa and China, for instance, but in principle it seems to be working. Actually, it's not working. Actually, the MOOCs also have this Matthew effect. The rich get richer. It's the students who already have earned a first university degree, maybe even students who already got a doctorate degree who take part. If you look at what these students are doing, huge numbers of learners, of users, I should be saying, are registering for the MOOCs, but only a tiny part of them is actually getting a pass grade, getting some sort of certificate. And even in this case, the MOOCs of the University of Edinburgh, in this case even fewer users have ever posted something on the forums than have gotten a pass grade. So the participation is somewhat strange. The usage of these MOOCs is not as intended. They are not being used as courses. They are used as stockpiles of material, for instance. So this led Sebastian Schum to this conclusion. 1 year ago, almost 1 year ago, we have a lousy product. He, the godfather of the ex-MOOC, so to speak, eventually said, we have a lousy product. A few weeks ago, this paper appeared. This is a study on one of the edX MOOCs in comparison to face-to-face education. So the title of that paper was very promising. All cohorts learn equally. So suddenly it seemed, oh, we found the holy grail, so to speak, it's going to work. But if you look at the conclusion, the paper starts out by saying all cohorts learn equally, and then you look at the conclusion says our self-selected online students are interested in learning, considerably older, and generally have many more years of college education than the on-campus freshmen with whom they have been compared. What kind of comparison is that? So it's not that all cohorts learn equally. The online students who take part in MOOCs are not the freshmen from your university. These are two different populations. In a nutshell, what did we learn about X MOOCs? First of all, the usage is different from what was intended. They are not being used as courses. Many users register but never show up. Some users take the first week and then give up. Some users, this is what I know from my own course, some users go to specific points in that course, look up specific material and then leave. It's not being used as a course by most users. Point two, producing and running these courses takes a huge load of effort. And this has been underestimated up front. People were self-sacrificing, so to speak. Once you have to pay for that amount of work, it's going to become costly. And third, I mentioned the phase of competing about reputation. These days, that's over. If you produce the umpteenth MOOC on whatever, algebra, it's not going to be noticed. You do not gain reputation from that. So what the platforms are doing is they're turning to continuing education, like Udacity here. That's the current homepage of Udacity. Grab that promotion, stand out by learning. This is really competition between one worker and the next. The one worker who got that Udacity course has a better looking resume than the other worker. This is what MOOCs turned into. Udacity offers nano degrees, what they call it, for, no longer open, $200 a month. But you get a coach online, not face to face. You get an online coach and you get some support in creating a project, building a project portfolio. And obviously industry likes that idea. Udacity just got 35 million US dollars, in part from Germany, Bertelsmann. So it seems as though industry likes that idea. Similar things happening with edX. edX now has courses that are to be paid for, are no longer free. In a very tiny font, $1,249 for that course. And another way of not making it open, you have to prove that you've got a bachelor's degree and several years of work experience. Similar things happening in Germany with iversity. Iversity turning to very profitable subjects, accounting, for instance. If you want face-to-face teaching, yeah, you can have that, 700 euros, introductory price. That's no longer open. If you want the open version, it's an audit track. It's not a real thing anymore. 2 years ago, the free course was the real thing, the real MOOC, but now the real MOOC, so to speak, has become an audit track. You're just auditing, you're just trying it out. It's not taking the course. So this is what has happened to the MOOC. Actually, the O is no longer true. It never has been in the sense of being open like Wikipedia, being open like Linux. In some places, material was provided under CC BY non-commercial, but mostly the MOOCs have been locked down anyway, but now you have to pay. In the long run, it seems to me like the platforms are heading toward this model, a two-sided market. It's the same as you see with Amazon. Imagine Amazon in the middle. On the left-hand side, you have the publishers. On the right-hand side, you have the readers, the audience that's reading books. That's the model you see with Amazon. I guess Coursera and maybe iversity are trying to do the same. The universities deliver material, run courses. Coursera sells these courses, maybe sells degrees, certificates. to the audience. This could be the strategy of those platforms. And what happens during that course is that the identities of the universities are hidden behind the identity of the platform. Like with Amazon, you buy a book on Amazon, you do not care from which publisher it comes, you just go to Amazon. Similarly with Coursera. I hear students saying, I found something on the internet, it's called Coursera, I'm going to take a course there. They're not talking about a specific university, they're talking about Coursera. So what may work? Lean production. We need lean production. These are some figures from German universities about production. You see those figures, 5 digits, maybe even 6 digits. I do not need to spell that out. In total, it is costly to produce a course. What could we be doing? You can do cheap production. In case you ever wondered how Myriada, the Spanish platform, how Myriada manages to create or to have created for them by universities hundreds of MOOCs. It's easy. You just take PowerPoint slides. This is a PowerPoint slide. And somebody is going to read that PowerPoint slide word by word. If you do it like that, that's easy. I can do 100 MOOCs easily with that style. What we need is lean production. Not cheap production, lean production. Salman Khan was the one to pioneer that kind of approach without wanting to, but in effect he was the pioneer of this kind of approach. Hand-drawn lectures, if you will. Maybe not lectures. It's like sitting next to your teacher and the teacher is going to explain something on the back of an envelope. This kind of approach has huge successes, as you can see, 2 million views. This seems to be working. A very lean approach. It looks cheap, but it's actually lean, not cheap. There has been a study recently comparing the PowerPoint style approach to the Khan style approach, and they found out the informal approach works better when it comes to the appraisal of the audience. It's not clear whether it works better in terms of learning, but the audience likes that kind of approach. Some more findings. Videos are watched more if they are shorter than 6 minutes. It's not necessary to show the lecturer. For a decade or so, we were going to extremes to capture the face of the lecturer as well, but it turns out that's not so important. You may want to show the face of the lecturer from time to time, but most of the time it's not needed. If you look at my videos, I did some experiments with showing my face. I stopped these experiments. It doesn't help. You don't need the face. One final remark from that study. Slow speech is something that you should be avoiding. When it comes to lean production, you have to think about modularity. These big monolithic courses are not easy to recycle. If you want just to recycle one single part of that big monolithic course, you're in trouble. So one thing to be doing is to create very small units, like 5-minute long videos. Maybe do not think in courses, do think in nuggets, knowledge nuggets, stuff like that. They are way easier to recycle. It's easier for the students to navigate within those nuggets. And it's of course easier to produce. If you just want to produce 5 minutes of video, it's easier to do than 90 minutes of video. What I found out with my YouTube videos, it's your students, as mine, your students will just go to Google and to YouTube, type into the search box partial differential equation and look what's coming up. They're going to look at the first links, the first search results, and whatever works for them, they're going to use. If your material works for them, they're going to use it. Concerning lean production, there is a pitfall concerning lean production, that's self-exploitation. In particular when it comes to open educational resources. Who is going to pay for those open educational resources, for those open courses? This is an extreme example. That's an interview of a German lecturer who produced a MOOC. He says, we are going to make do with the 25,000 euros for our course of 7 weeks length, because our labor time is essentially free of charge. He works for nothing. This employee is for free. This doesn't work. Somebody has to pay for that. So beware of self-exploitation. Next point of what may be working. Student-to-student teaching, student-to-student mentoring, tutoring. This is an instance of what we would hope for. It's from my own course. Somebody asking a very meaningful question, several users giving very meaningful answers in long text, not just 2 words or Twitter-style brevity. This is what we are hoping for, but it's not happening automatically. One thing is when you have enough users on the forum, in particular if you do a course in English. If you're doing courses in English, you may have enough users on the forum, and among these users there are going to be super posters, as they are called, quote, super posters, unquote. There's even research on those super posters. So some of those users are going to answer questions for you. They are going to do the tutoring essentially for free. Another case of self-exploitation. Platforms make use of that, of course. Beside the forum, peer review, peer gradings, you can have students look at each other's work. The difficult part is how to get something meaningful out of that. From what I hear from users who took part in courses with peer review, most of the reviews they get are just one-liners that do not really help. So what you need are 2 things. Something like a scoring rubric. You have to provide a table for those users saying, what about the form? Is literature being referenced to, stuff like that. You have to somehow give a raster for scoring. And of course you have to have users who want to diligently fill in that table. That may be difficult. Another way of exploiting users of those MOOCs. I'm going to speak about the flipped classroom in a minute, but this is about student-to-student tutoring, mentoring, teaching, whatever. So one way of running a MOOC could be, like Caltech has done, this is from Caltech, EPFL does the same. One way of running a MOOC could be you do a regular class, which you turn into a MOOC for the broader audience. There is a regular class running at your university, and you open that class in MOOC style. The larger audience does not receive any certificates or something, but you're exploiting them to fill the forum. There are going to be super posters among the larger audience, for instance. They're going to answer the questions of your students, of your, say, 50 students, local students, on the forum. You may do that, but beware of this exploitation phenomenon. Interactivity. We want to move away from television consumption. Obviously, you do not learn much by just consuming television, or YouTube, that is. We want to move away from that. We want to have active learners. The learners should be doing something. The first approach to that was using quizzes. Like here in my own course, if you will, that's a single lecture. What you see here, that timeline, that's a single lecture. Cut down into very small units of, say, 2 or 3 minutes each. And interleaved with these units are quizzes. Maybe a dozen of these quizzes as separate entities. The next step, this is what I'm trying with students from Saarland University. It's called Capira. The next step is to try and integrate quizzes into the videos. So it's not that the video finishes and then you're asked something about the video or something related to it. The quiz is embedded into the video. Remedial math, this is a simple derivation, and right in the middle of that simple derivation comes a quiz where you're being asked about the next step. You have to think with the lecturer, so to speak, or think ahead. Or in this case, the notion of the natural logarithm crops up, and now I'm asking, oh, the natural logarithm, what was the natural logarithm in this circumstance, and so on. Do you remember what the natural logarithm was? Stuff like that. So we're trying to integrate quizzes into videos. And then, speaking of open educational resources, There's much more than quizzes. For instance, in electrical engineering, it's rather simple to have circuit simulators and to get them for free. So with edX, it's not just that the platform as such is free, it's open source. Even this component, it's a JavaScript component, this component that creates the circuit simulator is free, you can use that. So speaking of open educational resources, do not think only about books and videos, think about simulations, for instance. One has to be careful about the quizzes. That's the pitfall side of the quizzes. If you simply create multiple choice tests, naively create multiple choice tests, they're going to be bad. There's a huge load of theory and practice behind multiple choice tests, how to do them right. I've written something in German about that, maybe that's helpful. Next thing, who is going to take these quizzes? This is what I learned with my remedial mathematics courses. With these courses, the quizzes are not compulsory, they're optional. And guess who is going to take these quizzes? It's the students who are sitting in the first row. It's not the students who are sitting in the last row. It's always those students who gain most. Again, it's the Matthew effect. For unto everyone that hath shall be given. So you may want to think about making quizzes compulsory to help everybody. The breadth. This is the last book that I actually watched. I clicked away all those quizzes. I don't like those quizzes. Okay, so this is one that I watched. It's really interesting to see what you can learn. Emergency medicine. I always wanted to learn what really happens in the ER. Not just to see what Dr. House is doing, but how it really looks like. The Technical University of Munich is going to teach you what it really looks like, what they do, how they make decisions within seconds. This is my hobby project, videos on the general theory of relativity. Some people actually do watch these videos. It's not my students, you can bet on that, but some people actually do watch such derivations. Speaking about diverse learners, not only about diverse topics, about diverse learners, it's students, I should be saying pupils from German gymnasiums, high school students if you will. They are watching this and asking meaningful questions about that. My students don't. What fits into this image is that edX started to offer advanced placement courses. I guess I know which kind of student is going to take these courses. This is a remark that is very fitting in this respect. A journalist said, "My 9th grade son took 2 Stanford MOOCs and completed them." I thought, right now, every wealthy parent just hired tutors for their kids to sit and complete 4 Stanford MOOCs to put on their college application. The bar at every elite school just went up. This is what's probably going to happen. You have to take these MOOCs as a child to be able to push your way through elite education. Final and most important point, face-to-face education, face-to-face meetings. There's lots of advantages of face-to-face meetings that we are ignoring in online education. This sort of ritualized structure. You meet Monday morning, 10 to 11:30, every week. That's a bit different from what you do online. With online courses, you may take them in the evening, you may take them on the bus, on the weekend, or you may not. There is no ritualized structure. This is deeply ingrained into the face-to-face system, this kind of ritualized structure. You can't forget about going to class. Social proof. The most important example of social proof to me is if everybody stands in line for the iPhone 6, it has to be good, so you have to stand in line for the iPhone 6 as well. Similarly in the classroom, if everybody does strange stuff like solving linear differential equations of second order, maybe you should be doing the same because everybody else is, which seems to be meaningful. Some kind of social proof. You do not have that sort of social proof on the internet. We could be thinking about how to provide that sort of social proof. Then it's about investment. As a student, I took the time to walk to the university in the morning, or maybe I drove to the university, or maybe sat on the bus for 1 hour or so. I made an investment. I want this investment to be valuable. I want to get something out of it. That's different from just opening my notebook computer and typing in a URL. I can easily close that computer again, or go to Facebook, that is. Conduct in public. Once or twice a week I get very derogatory comments on YouTube. Nobody would do that in the classroom, at least not up to now. And there's lots of stuff around the classroom, small talk, meeting in the cafeteria, walking around with your friends, stuff like that. You do not do that online. All of that is missing in online courses. So how to integrate face-to-face with online material, online experiences, what I'm doing for 3-4 years now. It's called inverted classroom, flipping the class. Students prepare up front, watching videos, old lecture recordings. At the start of the semester, I give them a list of which videos should be watched for which date or which meeting. Canned explanations, if you will, simple exercises. And then I have face-to-face time to do more complex stuff, to really look at what they're doing. What are they writing down when solving a problem, for instance? How do they try to tackle a problem? We can have discussions on that. That's not so easy to do online. What I learned about the inverted classroom is that you really have to be careful about never explaining what you explained in the videos. If somebody says, I didn't have time to watch the videos, and you start explaining what you explained in the videos again, nobody is going to watch any video anymore. That's the vital point. If you do that wrong in the first week, you're lost. That semester is gone. Then point 2, what I learned about the inverted classroom. Once I have all that material online, the subject matter in its entirety, once that is online, I have much more freedom. I can do something meaningful in the classroom. I do not need to cover the entire breadth in an encyclopedic fashion. I can pick out single aspects and focus on them. As lecturers, we have this kind of fixation on coverage, trying to cover everything, which is boring and which is confusing the students. And the third, the longer I teach using the flipped classroom, I see that flipped classroom style teaching induces frustration. It's so easy to give a lecture. Everybody thinks it works. The lecturer thinks he has taught something, the students think they have learned something, and everybody is okay. When you're doing the inverted classroom style of approach, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to frustrate your students because you're going to see that it doesn't work. Learning is hard, and you're going to see this every minute, which is frustrating. The related approach that we have tried recently is this one for the remedial math course, mastery learning, very old style approach from the 60s, Keller's personalized system of instruction. We are not using electronic quizzes, we're using human tutors to do quizzes. So the students have to walk up to a tutor, asking him or her to do a quick test, and the tutor is doing that test and deciding if that test went okay. The idea being that the human tutor can give much more help than the electronic system. The human tutor can say, look at this point, go back to that unit, stuff like that. The electronic system can hardly do that. And of course there's some sort of compulsion. If you work with a human being, it's a different story than clicking and typing. So, what may be missing? Vitamins and fiber. I guess we have focused too much on subject matter. Subject matter to me is like carbohydrates, proteins and fats in nourishment. So that's a base load, but it's not all. There has to be more. There has to be fiber and there has to be vitamins, or vitamins as the British say. Fiber to me is, there has to be a certain difficulty. I mentioned 2 persons doing research on that. Salomon is older research, the amount of invested mental effort You have to invest mental effort. Learning doesn't come for free. And by Björk, desirable difficulties. There's a specific sort of difficulty that has to be built in. If it's not built in, you're not learning as much. Let's like fiber in your nourishment. And vitamins may be something like critical thinking, grit. In Germany we say Mumm, grit, self-reliance and cooperation. We have to add these ingredients. These are vital ingredients. We're always thinking about subject matter, about differential equations or what you do in the emergency room. But critical thinking should be our focus. The final question I have is, why do we need bottled education? I see this analogy between education and water. The education system is like bottled water. Bottled water is a great idea in terms of business. You make lots of money from something that is essentially free. Could the educational system be something of that same nature, with selling bottled water maybe? Whereas in reality you could be drinking water from the faucet, that is, everything's for free on the internet. So why do we need bottled education? That's the main question I'm left with. Thanks a lot.